So, welcome to our very first podcast, Craig.
How the hell did this come about, Marcus?
I think it started 2 years ago from memory. It feels like it's a decade already, but do you remember the first time I called you?
Yeah, I do. It was I'd gone to a meeting actually, and you were on stage and you were speaking, and you mentioned who you work for, and I thought, I've just bought one of them. I need to get friendly with this guy because he's going to be the one that gets my up to the top in the services straight away. And if I need a service doing quickly, he'll be able to do it. So, and then sure enough, you rang me the next day.
To kind of tell everybody why I rang you was because you're campaigning. It was actually, I was impressed. And I don't give many compliments in life. You ask my missus, she'll tell you that. But I was really impressed with the way that you were cutting through in your campaigning. And you know, 2 years is a long time past in politics, but it's funny if you look at the last 2 years and the way that your journey's been, my journey's been within the, I'm not going to say just political arena, but community arena and everything that's going on with the UK today. It kind of is the backdrop to why we're doing this podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to look at how both of us have got to the position that we're in now and involved as we are in local politics and even national politics now. You know, we're both just ordinary guys. We're both working class backgrounds. You know, I'm from deepest, darkest Leicestershire and you're from that other country. What is it?
Yeah, it's Wales. It's West Wales. We actually call it Little England beyond Wales, just so you know. All right.
But yeah, we're just two ordinary guys that, you know, we have got involved in politics because we're both passionate. We're passionate about making our communities better. And, you know, this is a next evolution of what we're doing. You know, I've been campaigning now for 5 years. I've only been involved in politics for 5 years. I mean, I actually know. How long have you actually been involved in politics?
Well, dare I say it, it was 14-year-old. And it was actually, I have this little bit of a thing I say that there were two iron ladies in my life. There was the one on TV and there was Mother Jones, God bless her. And actually, I was being a Welshman, and when the mining strike and everything's going on and a lot of big subjects are happening, it was just the fact that there was someone who was on the TV, no matter what your politics would be at the time, that the country felt it had a bit of purpose and hope. Mm-hmm. And that mantra has been everything that I've lived my life by. And so that's where it really started. And, you know, it's been there for a long time. And community and what I've been involved with through my life, it's been there. Yeah. And it's grown like yourself in the last 5 years. What about yourself?
I think it's the same. Everybody says, oh, I'm not political. You know, you knock on people's doors. I'm not into politics. Well, that's not the truth because everybody is political. We all make choices day in, day out. And they're choices one way or another. And, you know, whether you buy the Sun or whether you buy the Mirror, it's still a choice as such. And therefore, politics is just an extension of that choice. Do you prefer this way of running the country or do you prefer that? Do you prefer these services or that services? And then every 4 or 5 years, people get a choice on who makes those choices for us. And I think for me, it was all geared around Brexit. That's how I got into it. That was my sort of first step into politics. It was my first sort of ignition of I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
And that was, 5-6 years ago now. And it's been a roller coaster ever since.
I'm not talking about Brexit tonight.
We're not talking about Brexit.
Going back
Absolutely
over that subject. But I do get the choice bit, and the choice bit actually comes back to that where we started a little bit of conversation. I chose to ring you 2 years ago, and I thought I want to get to know why you think the way you do. And understand why you're so passionate about your politics and the way you're putting it across.
Yeah, well, I think with the campaigning side of things, I do things very differently. I've not been around politics for an awful long time, but I have been around business and I've marketed a business. And I think that's the way that I do my politics slightly different. I market the product, as in the candidate, whether it be me, whether it be one of my colleagues.
Yeah.
I market very much as the product, as a business product. And we look at the best attributes of that. And then we tell people about those best attributes. And straight away, when you and I got talking a couple of years back, it was like, I like this guy, I can work with him. What I didn't realise is that pretty much, like I say, we're going to spend so much time together now.
Well, this comes to this bit, now, with the podcast. I mean, we kind of almost were thinking about the podcast at the same time. And then we kind of, it was just like, let's do a podcast. So, well, actually, we've both been thinking about that. And yeah, Why do you think the podcast is important? And why do you think that cutting through all that, so much noise out there at the moment, and people can watch whatever they want, but the cutting through, why do you think podcasts or subject matters in the field that we're in today will help the ordinary man and woman out there?
We live in a very diverse place at the minute. And I'm not talking about the colour of skin or religion or anything like that. I'm talking about how people get their information. So, you know, some people read newspapers, some people read online newspapers, some people watch social media, TV. But what I'm trying to get at is everything changes. There's no one medium that gets across your message to absolutely everybody. And the podcast is another feather to our cap. It's another way for us to communicate to people, to get across our views, because not everybody's going to agree with us. You know, sometimes I don't agree with you. Yeah. And I know I'm quite rightly so the other way around. But, you know, it's another way of people seeing what we're like as individuals, what we really like as people.
Yeah, and I also think, and I got to say this about the podcast, we are not the professionals. Trust me, we've been writing notes, and here's the pad, there it is, all the script. But we've been talking about this because it's important to us, and we want to touch on the subjects that really matter, and people are talking about it in all different ethers. But we hope we're going to cut through with some of this. And we're going to touch on the podcast series a bit later on.
I think as well as if you listen to anybody that's done a podcast before, they'll all tell you right at the beginning, the first couple of episodes were absolute crap. So it can only get better from here.
We're absolute crap. Yeah, we're definitely crap, yeah. So just kind of on that, and we are, you are Craig Smith and I am Marcus Jones, and we've had a bit of banter, what we call this. And I think I mentioned something which is an old slapstick comedy sketch years ago, Alias Smith and Jones. But you told me something earlier.
I did. Unfortunately, if we do that, we're going to be in high court before the end of the episode goes
Fair
out.
Play. Okay. So we're going to have a different name by the end of end of this episode, maybe, but we'll have a different name. So we'll just call ourselves Smith and Jones for now. Yeah?
We'll have our thinking caps on, which, to be honest, most of us
not much there left there.
We
yeah,
can have some
definitely.
caps on.
Right, let's get into the meaty stuff now. They say a week in politics is a long time. I'm going to say one word: Starmer.
We knew he would be bad. I told everybody. I spent a year and a half telling people how bad Starmer would be as our PM. And it's not even taken a year and a half to everybody to agree with me. God knows what happened last year. I think people just fell out of love with the Conservatives.
Yep.
And quite rightly so. I mean, we were absolutely awful in the last 12 months. We really were. We were infighting and everything else. So we didn't, Labour didn't win the election. We lost it. And unfortunately, because of, our ineptitude of running a government towards the end, we've been lumbered with this absolute imbecile.
So if Starmer was a football manager, and I always use sport to kind of liken some outcomes, but if Starmer was a football manager and he's had his first few games, I think he would have been sacked already.
I don't think he'd be able to manage it. Can you remember Accrington Stanley, that advert? And who's Accrington Stanley?
Yeah. The young kid, Accrington. Yeah.
God, we are showing our age.
Yeah.
But that's it. Nobody in the right mind would put Starmer as captain of their football team or manager. Why would you? Why would you put somebody that, has not got the aptitude to, as my dear late grand said, run a chip shop? Because he couldn't. He could not run a chip shop. He'd end up putting sugar instead of salt on the chips. And that's the type of guy we've got.
Well, I can't talk too much. I support Man United and they're doing a crap job at the moment with the manager they've got. But, Starmer's last week, Starmer's last few weeks. And let's go from the top. Yeah, Mandelson.
He got it wrong. We all know he got it wrong. He should never, ever have appointed Mandelson in the first place. It's not like this guy hadn't had form. How many times has he been sacked as a minister before? Is it 3, 4?
Three times, yeah.
And still, they thought it would be a good idea to put Mandelson into one of the top foreign dignitary jobs and give him that opportunity. And it's, you and I, we both run businesses. Mm-hmm. If you've got somebody, you wouldn't give him your star salesman, or it just wouldn't happen. But for some reason, they decided, or Starmer decided, he was the right guy for the job.
So talking about Mandelson, and I think everybody would have seen the pictures from today on the TV, Kemi at the dispatch box today, absolutely going at it. And Starmer wasn't there.
Yeah. He's been accused of lying to the public. Because obviously, if people that don't follow politics, what's happened obviously is Mandelson has been sending out letters to his friend, his bestest friend in the world, Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile, and then writing further letters after he's been convicted saying, we're going to get you off. And, apparently these letters that are now, nearly 20 years of age, haven't come out before. So you're telling me at the highest level of government, any foreign dignitary, any foreign ambassador, with the due diligence process, MI5 will be all over them. They will know what size your inside leg is. They will know what colour socks you prefer. And you're telling me that these emails, these letters were never, ever found before? Of course they were. And Starmer knew about them. But he's lied. He's buried them because he's one of the mates. He's one of his Islington wine set, champagne drinking whatevers.
Do you think it's the end of Starmer?
Absolutely. There is no way Starmer can carry on. He's been given the opportunity today in Parliament to come along and defend himself. And to, he's been asked a straight question. Did you lie to Parliament about, did you know whether or not all these letters and things existed? And last Wednesday, he said, I quote, I have confidence in Mr. Mandelson. He had confidence in him on Wednesday. Well, actually, he was already told on the Tuesday. And then on the Thursday, obviously, Mandelson went. So within the space of 3 days. And let's not forget, this is not the first time this has happened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times now.
Well, there definitely going to be more. We know that. But I have to say, you look at the front bench of Labour today, which we know, junior ministers, they just didn't want to be there. It's like the subs bench of Man United. Let's be straight. But then you've got.
Well, let me ask you a question. Yeah. If you've got, you've made a massive mistake in your business, and it's on you.
Yeah.
Are you going to send out the junior valeter to take your thing?
You're the front man. It's reputational risk. You're the front man, and you have to be out there. And you take the good with the bad. But more importantly, and I think what people always want to know is rationale. I always talk about rationale in business, and they want to know the rationale of why you've made a decision that you've made. I will always accept, and we have to in this modern age, that people will make mistakes. I've got no problem with that. But there are certain mistakes that are unforgivable. And when there are families who have been deeply hurt by the outcomes of individuals, I mean, there was a great interview on Sunday morning, Laura Kunsberg politics program, and she had on there, family members. And it was hard to watch, and even the political individuals that were on there from different parties, you could see the difficulty they had in commentating, and they didn't want to commentate, to be fair. But I also think that coming back to these decisions on what you know, what you don't know, it comes back to vetting. I mean, we talk about. Knowing what people's background is and what they've done in the past, etc. If you've served in the armed forces, you're vetted. If you go into the police force, you're vetted. If you apply for jobs, you're vetted. And if you're putting someone in a close circle to the President of the United States, are we saying he wasn't vetted correctly? Because I think that's actually a bigger concern in the outcomes, because it shows our failing in our processes as well. So we're putting other people at risk because of processes. So I think there's that. But I also think that, for me, it's bad decision making.
Yeah. But that's the whole nature, his whole tenure as PM so far has been bad decision makings. And you hit the nail on the head. It's the due process of going through. And I think he obviously clearly knew about these letters. He clearly knew everything. So it's become less now about the bad decision that he's made, and particularly today that he's not decided to go to Parliament to defend these decisions. It's now come all about the cover-up, and there clearly is a cover-up. And let's not forget, we're not innocent either.
Yeah.
Chris Pincher a few years back, that was the catalyst to bring down Boris.
Yeah.
And it is almost exactly the same scenario. Starmer was there on the front bench in opposition, calling for Boris's resignation over the Chris Pincher incident. And now he's facing something I would say is actually worse. The ambassador to the United States of America. But it's not about that. It's about the Prime Minister's decision to cover up information that is vital to the appointment. And that's where we've gone wrong.
I just want to go back to front benches because, as we said, the front bench of Labour today was very meek, very poor. There was no one senior there. But then you look at our front bench. I have to say, we had star strikers out today.
Absolutely. And you've got to give it to Kemi. She's been on top form for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A question in PMQs last week was clinical. It was exactly what we need. It was her best performance without a doubt. And again today, very, very good questions. She's got him on the ropes. He knows he's on the ropes. How long can they keep him there before they decide, end of round 3, throw the towel in?
And then Robert came in then and carried on, punching very, very hard. I can't wait to see this play out. But of course, we've got a bit of a natural break because we've got a certain American president landing in about 12 hours' time from memory.
In fact, he's in the air now.
He's in the air now. So that visit, I mean, just keeping on the Mandelson piece, that's going to be an awkward visit. He's going to see the king. Trump is. They're going to keep. They're trying to keep him away from what I understand of the press because of the movements. But somewhere along the line, someone's going to say, "What about Mandelson?" What's Trump going to say?
What can Trump say?
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, he knew him quite well as well, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there.
No,
I don't think
we'll stay away from that. We don't want to be in court with this one.
That's their country. We're talking about our country.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly embarrassing for the Prime Minister to lose his ambassador, the week before the American president comes over to this country. It's just absolutely cracky. You could not write this rubbish. You really couldn't. And I'm not being funny. It's totally Starmer's fault. He's brought it on himself. He should never have appointed Mandelson in the first place.
So moving away from Mandelson, not that I want to, because honestly, it's been just one of the biggest stories. As you said, bigger than Chris Pinch. But let's talk about Angela Rayner.
Have we got to?
Well, yes, we do. In all fairness, we do because we don't want to forget her. Well, we do, but I've got to say that seems a lifetime ago.
It does, and it's only 7 days. He's gone from literally one train crash on straight into the next, and what Rayner did exactly the same. And I think Rayner even more so because she's been so vocal over the years about calling out Tory corruption and this, that and the other. And she was really nasty in some of the things that she used to say. I think she called us scum at one point.
Yeah, she called scum, yeah.
And, to have that level of viciousness within her, and she's been doing this for years and years and years, and then she does exactly the same thing that some of these other people did and tries then to say, oh, well, actually, no, it's not right, and this, and she wouldn't go. But I think, again, it boils back to the leadership. Starmer should have sat her down and said, you've done wrong, you've made a mistake, you should have done it this way. Whether it was deliberate or not, to me, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Well, it does matter, because if it is deliberate, then she's broken the law. She's saying it's not deliberate. She's not broken any laws, we know. But what she has done is morally wrong. And it's the moral things that we've got to start. The whole of politics needs to change on that. I'm totally firm. Yeah. And Starmer should have called it out. I forget which ministry it was that was saying in their defence, they'd set up this new agency that could look at anybody that had caused any problems, and they would be out straight away. Well, he's had 5 ministers go now, 5 in a year. It's clearly not working.
Just remind me, what was Angela Rayner's brief?
She was the housing minister.
That's right. Sorry, I forgot. And that comes back down to, if you don't know your own stuff. I was going to say another word then. Yeah. But if you don't know your own stuff, shit. But if you don't know your own shit, then you really got a problem as a minister, because you've got to get it right.
Yep.
You're on stage or you're in the public eye, and that's the bit that you are out there banging the drum, and then that's the one thing that you fail on. Mm-hmm. I think there's no coming back. But yet certain press are already saying, oh, she'll be back. She'll make her way back. Now, we do know that politicians do make their way back. We've got a few that were in our party. Yeah. And I don't want to mention any names, but there are a few. But you just touched on about the changing face of politics and this need, and this real need, and want from the public, and the temperature of the public as well. But that's the bit that worries me. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in a way that, we see the TV, we see, how many hundreds of thousands people walk in the street the weekend in London. The temperature is high. And that worries me, because I want it to come down so we can have those proper conversations, but we have got to get rid of some of these elements that I don't care which party it is, by the way, it's just got to go. Mm-hmm. And I want people to have trust in me, in you, in what we're doing and why we're doing it. But it doesn't help when you get certain things like Angela Rayner and Mandelson, does it?
Absolutely not. And, what is the way forward? We cannot expect our politicians, to have lived a perfect life, to, be priests or, members of the clergy or whatever. We can't expect that from a politician. Yeah. We're all human beings at the end of the day. But we can expect a minimum standard of decency. And if you're networking with paedophiles, to me...
Well, that goes past that, doesn't it? Let's be straight.
That's it.
I mean, we always talk about the Nolan principles, but I actually think it goes past the Nolan principles now. I think there has to be a higher expectation, whatever that is. And I suppose some of the things that we've talked about today is about communications. And funny enough, Starmer's just lost his communications manager, from my understanding as well. So he's got no help there, is he, really? He's
not having the best week, to say. Or the month, let's face it, or the last 14 months.
Yeah, the 14 months, we'll go with that. Now, we spoke about choices at the beginning, and there was an interesting choice that's kind of taken place in the last 24 hours. And let's move on to a choice of a well-respected previous Conservative MP moving to Reform.
Yeah, Danny Kruger. Unlike some of the other defections that we've seen recently, and let's be very, I think it was 8 ex-Tory MPs or Tory senior Tories that have gone over recently. A lot of them I wouldn't give the time of day to. Some of them are a bit out there, a bit wacky, this, that, and the other. But Danny, I know really well. He helped me during my campaign last year when I was standing for Parliament. I had dinner with him. He's a very thoughtful, very considered, very nice person. And he's also one of the most excellent orators, in my opinion, without a far. He's definitely one of the best orators in Parliament. And it's a real shame that he's decided that his only path. I sort of get, our party, let's be honest, is not in the greatest shape at the minute.
Yep.
The country is not in the greatest shape. Yep. And you can see why these people are tempted by the Pied Piper or Reform PLC. But it's, for me, if something's broken, you should fix it, especially if you're a very skilled builder like Danny is. Danny has got the building blocks to rebuild the party, but he's decided to take those blocks and all his know-how and all his skills and go to elsewhere. And I think that's a real shame.
So his speech yesterday, I thought was very thoughtful, very, very thoughtful. And I've watched it a couple of times now. But there was a piece of that I fundamentally disagree with him about the flame of conservatism, not going out, but moving, as I think he put it. And I absolutely just, in principle, disagree with that, because I see the passion of people in our party, the effort, the energy, all ages, all guises, etc. So, it's a personal choice for him. It's a big choice in what he's done. And we know that he's been campaign manager for key individuals. He's done big jobs, etc. Do you believe that we have got a lot of people from Conservatives gone to Reform? But do you really believe in that statement that he made yesterday that the baton's being handed over to Reform?
Absolutely not. I know we talk about the Conservatives being the oldest party in the country. Parties close, parties finish. 200 years ago, I was talking about this to my wife earlier, 200 years ago, the Liberal Party were the dominant party.
Yeah.
And they've not been in power other than the coalition for, 100 years or so. We're definitely in a state of renewal. Obviously, that's Kemi's theme, is renewal. If you've just had the biggest election defeat in your history, you're not going to be riding high straight away. But let's not forget, a lot of the people that caused these issues are now moving to other parties. People call them Tory Mark II. I don't think they are Tory Mark II, because I don't think some of these people were Tories in the first place.
Liberals.
Some were Liberals, definitely. Yeah. And, we still have Liberals within our party. But we do represent, as politicians, we have to represent the entire electorate.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that we should be a broad spectrum of politics within our party. I'm not a one nation Conservative by any stretch. I'm a centre-right traditional Conservative. But I also think that, the people that we get in as candidates should be sold on central Conservative values. I'm a Conservative because I believe in aspiration. I want a better life for me, for my children, for my grandchildren. And if people have got such a transactional relationship with politics that they can then just simply walk from one rosette to another, because let's face it, a lot of these people are doing it because they're looking ahead at the next election. I'll get in if I'm a Reform.
Well, I said to you, and again, I always kind of use the sport analogy, and I said to you, would you ever change your football team? And through good and bad, I've supported Man United. Right, I've seen them win things of the best things, Ferguson there, whatever, and they're not in a great place now.
Yep.
Right, they could have got relegated last year. I will never change my football team.
Yep.
Ever. And yes, I am wearing West Ham colours tonight before anybody says, but but I would never change my football team. And I'm not making light of football or politics or whatever, but principle, and principle to me is absolutely everything. And irrelevant of the outcomes of the future, and the reason I asked you that question, because I wanted you to really explore and give over to our audience of why you believe conservatism is alive and kicking. And I'll come back to a piece you said about, the why you follow it. It comes back to what we said earlier about why I do it. It's that purpose and hope, that self-determination. That, if you do the right thing will happen. But that's only if the rules of engagement, which are the policies of this country, allow things to happen, in the right way. We can't penalise people for being successful. We can't penalise people for starting up businesses. We can't penalise people for saving. We can't penalise people for, as a 24-year-old, I made the right decision and started a pension. What a clever 24-year-old.
Yep.
Yeah. Whoever he was, yeah. But, we shouldn't be penalising people in this country for that aspirational piece.
Absolutely.
But we are.
Absolutely. And all parties go through it. I mean, I'm not a football fan, but I'm an F1 fanatic. And I've supported Red Bull since the beginning. So we had years of not winning much. And then we've had some really good years with our superstar, Max. And then recently it's gone downhill quite rapidly because we've lost one of our star strikers in Adrian Newey. And politics is exactly the same. We had that absolute Boris bounce peak where, we could have got elected by not even going out and campaigning. But also, you've got to think of there are an awful lot of people in the Conservative Party and in all parties that don't get shouted about. And that's the members. The members do an awful lot for us as elected politicians. The councillors, the lower, you've got 3 different levels of local government. Councillors very rarely get a lot of praised for what they actually do. Not saying that because obviously I'm a councillor and I know you're a parish councillor.
I didn't
as well.
know that.
But, I do spend an awful lot of time because I want to do the very best job I can for my residents. And, politics all seems to be about the MPs. And when you've got MPs that are misbehaving, they're not doing what they've been done to do elected. And like we said earlier, they're human beings. They've got lives outside politics as well. And they will make decisions that are not the best decisions in their personal lives, in their business lives and everything else. But ultimately, these people hopefully become politicians because they want to help people and they want to make the country better. And I'm exactly the same as you. You are not going to build a better country by taxing people more. Labour have coined this phrase, working people. What's working people? Because they've got a really weird analogy of what a working person is. If you earn more than sixpence and twopence a week, you're no longer a working person. You're a manager.
What's sixpence and twopence? Don't forget our audience.
But it's one of these things where what is a working person? In my kid, when I was a kid, it was working class, middle class. That seems to have now been replaced by this new term, working people. I don't know how you feel about that. Are you a working person?
I hate labels. In life, I hate labels. Yeah. We're too quick in society today to put a label on everything. And I get why people think they have to. And some people want the label because I suppose for them is identity, whatever it be. I don't know. But from a point of view of, where's my train of thought going with this? To me, I have worked since I was 14 and a half years of age, because you could then, right? And I've been very fortunate, touch wood, that I have never been out of work. But that's because I've worked hard.
Yep.
I've committed. Now, I go back to Mother Jones, right? I'll always say a couple of things Mother Jones always taught me. Work, learn, and earn. That's what she told me as a 14-year-old. Yeah?
Wise woman.
Very wise woman. And the other thing she always used to say was, a cup of tea will fix everything. And do you know what? She ain't far wrong in that bit. But no, work, learn, and earn is a principle that I hold very dear to me. And that actually falls into my conservatism. And again, if you imagine, I grew up in Wales and it was very Labour and all that to go with it. But it comes back to that self-determination. It comes back to that. And I've come from, a working class background. But I don't hide behind that label or whatever, because I've been able to work, learn and earn. Mm-hmm. But that's through choice. What I don't want now is, and I don't want anybody to go through this thought process, I don't want people thinking, I'm going to be penalised for doing all the right things. Because what should happen, if you do the right thing should happen. And I don't want anything more than that for this country and people in our country. Yeah. But I just want to move the conversation on. And you touched on something about, local councillors, local, volunteers, etc. And let's bring the conversation to the local level now. And you're very much Leicestershire. I'm very much Nottinghamshire, but we are East Midlands. And you see the energy of our activists. But actually the activist, it's a word that I think it's a label. I'd rather say community-hearted people, because that's what they are. What do you see today in your community that makes you want to get up in the morning and beat the drum and make Britain better, but make the area that you live in better?
I'm very fortunate. I was born in northwest Leicestershire. In fact, this was my campaign slogan last year was born here, works here, lives here. I have lived around the world when I was in the Royal Air Force, but for the greater majority of my life, I've always been in the same place. And I'm from a little place called Coalville. Yep. So obviously coal, as in coal that comes out of the ground, It was the centre of the Leicestershire coalfield, and I'm old enough to remember the pits going. My dad was a miner, as was pretty much every man in my family. And then I'm also old enough to remember when they all closed in the mid-'80s. And for a long, long time, Coalville and the whole of Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire, the whole of the East Midlands really, had a real depression about it.
Yeah.
And it took, realistically, 30 years for it to start coming out of this depression. But we're starting to see that again because, people like you and I that started from nothing, that we've always worked, we've earned some money, we've paid the taxes, we've tried to better ourselves. We've got to a point now where we're not classed as working class anymore because we earn such and such a level. And that's wrong because I'm working class. I still get dressed every morning. I go out at 6 o'clock every morning. Yeah. That's my thing. I go training, then I do my work, then I do my politics and so on. I'm a working person. I work every single day. And to have this label that, you're not a working class person, it really winds me up to a degree, and it should not be allowed. But there's so many kids out there that could benefit from this. And this is the generation that we need to be speaking to. And it's something that the other party, the Turquoise Brigade, as I call them, are doing very well. They are speaking to this disenfranchised youth, and they're basically tempting. They are the Pied Piper. They're telling them whatever they want, they can have. If we can stop the boats, we can do this, we can give you more money, we can do... Ultimately, governments don't have any money. Governments do not earn money. They only raise money through taxes. And when you've basically pissed off every single person that pays higher rate taxes, and they've all, because how many, I don't know how many multimillionaires have left the country.
Oh, there's a few. There's a few gone.
It's massive amounts of multimillionaires, and they should be taxed to the. No, they shouldn't, because these people have gone through the process, often gone through the process that we've gone through, where they've started with nothing. I mean, if you look at all the big businesses, Amazon's and everything, Amazon started in a garage, and it's now one of the world's biggest employers. Yes, should he get taxed? Of course he should pay tax. But we shouldn't tax these people to the brink where they then take their whole infrastructure and all the jobs that they've created and the livelihoods that they've created away. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing people that are of a certain level of wealth that could literally live anywhere around the world say, screw you, England, we're not doing anything here, we're away, because they've got the means to do so. And then it's a knock-on effect all the way down, because, your average guy that starts an apprenticeship at school, the apprenticeships dry up. There's no longer those skilled jobs available. And we've seen it in the 70s and 80s with the car industry, and obviously you'll know a lot more about this than I will. But, all those skills are now disappearing. We used to be the global epicenter of car building, and now what have we got left?
Well, that's because, to be fair, I think all parties have been guilty of this. And, let's be self-reflective. The Conservatives were at fault with this, of driving people into universities to say that's the best way. But vocationally, we got a gap. Mm-hmm. And I see it every day. And
you say that, but don't forget, it was Blair that insisted everybody went to university, which... I didn't go uni.
No, I didn't. Listen, I was definitely not a uni person because, I was interested in playing rugby, so that was my fault, But the big part for me is that when you look at, and there's this whole conversation that we don't build anything in Britain anymore. I think we do, and I think we've got some very I know we've got some very talented people in this country. The bit about it is that governments need to get behind those people and behind our own industry and manufacturing and products and all the things that are British. And we need to make it easier for them to do business. But more importantly, we talked about the generation now that reform are targeted. We've got to give purpose and hope to the 14-year-olds of today plus. As I remember the 14-year-old version of me, as you will of yourself. Long time ago, we had more hair, right? Let's get straight. But remember that 14-year-old and that aspiration, inspiration, all those things inside of us that we wanted to do. And then you look at the world today, and it's a box of frogs. And I worry. I've got a 5-year-old grandson, and I'm thinking, I'm worried for him, yeah? And I'm looking then at young people. And I, as you know, I get very involved with apprenticeship programs. It's a passion of mine because I want to help young people. I want them to see the opportunities that are out there, because that work, learn and earn thing that's in my head. But yet we make it hard for them. We say to society today, with the current government, don't need too much money because we'll take it off you. And somehow we have got to help that generation. And this comes back to more local politics, the bit that I was talking about earlier on. And you know your area, Leicestershire, and certainly for the 24 years I've lived up here, I've really got to know Nottinghamshire, and it is my home. And all I can see is local people fighting really hard every day, trying to make money, and yet the government system holds them back.
Yeah, and it's got a knock-down effect, because we're talking about local here, but it's national politics that often govern local politics. We look back to the recent county council elections in May. Obviously, Nottingham Council fell, County Council, Leicestershire County Council fell as well. And now we've got two reform county councils led reform. Nottinghamshire, it's a majority. In Leicestershire, it's a minority. They've got 25. Now, without being bitchy or anything like that, they've got 25 brand new councillors in Leicestershire. Apologies, 24. One of them is a previous county councillor for the Conservatives, who, after we said no, we didn't want him to represent us anymore, in February of this year, he then decided to move to Reform. But obviously he did it because after 40 odd years of being in the Conservatives, he had an epiphany and thought that Reform were the better option for him. He's now the county council leader. In 17 years as a county councillor, as a councillor for the Conservatives, he was never given a job once.
Right.
There was a reason for that. And what we're seeing is, under his leadership, like many of the other county councils in the country, they're falling apart because they've got no experience, absolutely nothing. We've got a 19-year-old in charge of a £330 million budget for children and families. This isn't, we're not purchasing cushions or purchasing pens, or we're dealing with young people's lives.
Yeah.
We give it, these young people are perhaps the most vulnerable people in our society. And we've given it to a young person himself. Now, I don't care whether he's 19 or whether he's 39. But what I do care about is his level of experience. He could be the most bright, intelligent young man. And I've met him a couple of times, and he does seem quite articulate. He seems like a very good. But is he the right person for the job? Would you, in the business that you do, appoint as your second in command a 19-year-old with no experience?
To answer that question, I ran my first business when I was 21. Mm-hmm. So I would never not give someone the opportunity. But, and there's a but to this, I did the hard 9 yards from the age of 14 to 21. Yeah. I did my apprenticeships.
So you built up experience?
I built up experience. I was mentored. I worked with some of the best talented people, and it was in the food industry those days. And I was exposed to that. So to answer the question, you're right. Age isn't about that. It's about what training have they had, what development have they had. So when they get there, they're in the right place. And there's a couple of things here. You're dealing with real people, real lives. Yep. You're dealing with people's livelihoods. And some of these decisions are, and listen, there's people who know more about SEND schools and things like that than myself. This is serious shit. Mm-hmm. This is really, really serious for people. So we've got to make sure that whether it's whatever level of government, that whoever represents the life and oxygen of a community, of a region, of a country, that they are, semi-qualified to get to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll agree with me that we actually, all parties need more youth involved in politics. We've got to get young people.
We've got to get the energy in, yeah.
But my argument is, you wouldn't give those people, these young people, as aspiring as they want, because we are not, either of us, we're not going to crush anybody's aspiration.
No.
But you've got to be practical. These people would be great as an apprentice to bring along, to show them, to give them experience. I can tell you now, I was first elected 4 years ago in 21 as a brand new county councillor. On day one, I was given my email. I wasn't allowed to speak to the previous county councillor who I beat. And straight away, I'm there representing. I got bombarded with emails saying, do this, do that. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? You don't know. You don't have a clue what to do. I was incredibly fortunate that in our party, we had a system of mentorship.
Yeah.
So I was assigned a mentor. And that was pretty much week one. I shadowed her for many months afterwards. I then became her cabinet support as well. I'm now a deputy leader within the group. So we've maintained that relationship throughout. But what I'm getting at is we had 42 councillors in 21. So of those, I think about 30 were experienced councillors. And I, as a newbie, drew on that experience.
Yeah.
I was guided by that experience and shown the rope. And yes, there are training things in place, but they're not great, if I'm honest. It's an hour's brief with an officer. You don't get to know how a local council works by these briefings. You do by shadowing experienced councillors. And this time round, across the country, particularly in the East Midlands, we've seen an awful lot of brand new councillors with no experience and nowhere to go for mentorship. And that is worrying. And that's potentially what we're going to see if reform take the national stage as well.
MPs,
Yeah.
going to be a real risk. I will say one thing. Even though the Nottinghamshire Conservatives lost the lead of the county council, the overall results compared to the UK, we did something different compared to the UK. Our results were stronger, and don't get me wrong, we lost control, but we had a better outcome compared to everybody else, and you've seen this in the territory that you've campaigned. It's because of the volunteers, the activists, if you want to put a label on it. It's the energy. It's the people who still believe in that conservatism. And you see the young people coming out and supporting, knocking doors, asking people their views. And yeah, it's been tough. It's been quite rough. But, you're a product of how to beat reform. And I've got to chuck this in. This has really made me smile. We beat reform in Nuttall and Strelly a few weeks ago by 5 votes.
Yeah, and on Twitter, I looked at everything on Twitter. You only won by 5 votes. I don't know what you're shouting about. We still won.
Well, in football, 1-0 is 1-0, yeah. But I tell you what came from it. It was about local messaging, local campaigning, knowing what's going on the ground, the hard 9 yards, and really talking to the residents. And what was clear from the campaigning that I saw with reform, and Lee Anderson was out there, yeah. And I've got a view on Lee.
Now there is a man that changes his football strip.
Well, he does, yeah. Yeah, I wonder what his next one's going to be. Yeah. But you maybe we should send him a couple of new T-shirts ready for when he goes into the next.
I actually feel really sorry for Lee Anderson at the minute because he has gone from Labour to Conservative now to Reform, and obviously he's playing second fiddle to Nigel, and he always will. And Reform have just got out their football shirt. I don't know if you've seen the turquoise football shirts that they're doing.
Man City, you mean?
Yeah, something like that. I think, made in China or wherever they are.
Yeah.
But it's all Nigel Farage, number 10 on the back.
Yeah.
And I did see at their conference, I saw some of the photos, and poor old Lee Anderson has got his on there now as well, hasn't he? But he hasn't got his own number. He's just doing what Nigel tells him still. So
yeah, bless him. But going back to the 5 votes that we won by, yeah, I have to say, and it was a real lesson for me in that campaign. It was the energy, the dedication, but the flame of conservatism is alive. It's really alive, and I witnessed it. And it's a message to reform. I mean, it was that difficult defeat for them. I mean, remember, I'm only a parish councillor, right? And I'm not a county councillor. But I was mentioned in the chambers with Sam Smith. I mean, come on, I'm mentioned because of the video that we did about the boundaries, and we'll come on to the boundary conversation in a minute. But it just shows that it's winnable. And that for me is the bit. And that's why I believe the flame is certainly alive.
Every election is winnable with the right candidate, with the right message. And exactly that. Obviously I came over to help you guys do that campaign. And when you get that right candidate and the message aligned, it's magic. And whether it's 5 votes or 500, it really doesn't matter. Reform campaign on one thing and one thing only, and that's Nigel Farage. Now, I like Nigel. He's a great guy. I agree with a lot of what he says.
I've had a pint with him.
Yeah, we've had a pint with him. He's a conservative. He is a conservative. Do I agree with absolutely everything? Absolutely not. Do I think he talks a lot of gook sometimes? Absolutely. Yeah. But I understand what a fantastic orator he is. He can capture an audience, and that's a great skill.
It is.
And you can't knock him for that. But the whole party, it's not a party, it's a PLC. The whole Reform PLC is centred around one man. Everything in the county council elections back in May had Nigel Farage on it.
Yes, it did. All from London on the bottom of their paperwork.
And it was all about stopping the boats. Now, I don't know how many they stopped on the Trent, but they certainly stopped many on Whittick Brook, where I live. But, the whole campaigning is around national issues. Well, national issues isn't going to solve your scent crisis. National issues isn't going to get your bins emptied. National issues is not going to get your potholes filled in. But that's what they campaigned on. And I was the sole survivor in North West Leicestershire. We lost 7 of the 8 seats in North West Leicestershire. And the reason that was because I campaigned on what I'd done. I campaigned on local issues that I'd taken a grasp of in that last 5 years. And my opponent, as nasty as he was against me, he couldn't come back at that, because I've been a bloody good councillor for 4 years. I'd put everything into the role. And thankfully, and I am eternally thankful to the electorate, they put me back in and gave me that trust again for another 4 years.
Well, that's why we won, because we won in Nuttall and Australia, and I've got to benchmark that, because we talked about the boundary changes. And again, this is a Labour thing about the unitary and the elections in 2027. It'll be interesting what happens now, because Rayner's gone, which direction that goes, because there's a little bit of, should we say, conversation going on from local Labour councillors who are saying to me, not sure that this is going to be pushed as hard. But anyway, that'll be that conversation. But it comes back, we campaigned on local things. The number one thing that mattered, and they called me a liar, which is the most hilarious thing. I was a liar for raising the whole thing about the boundary. Well, I don't know which newspaper they were reading. It certainly wasn't the Sun, the Times, the Telegraph, or whatever else. But it's been out there for a couple of years now that this was coming. And I don't think Reform are as good as they think.
Absolutely not.
Now, I want to move the conversation on. So, we've talked about boundaries. We've talked about the national picture. We've talked about our passions for, obviously, politics as well. Let's talk about the East Midlands. And I know you touched on our elections, etc. I look at the East Midlands today, and I look at what's in the heart of the East Midlands and what it represents. And I've asked this question a few times of people. What does the East Midlands mean to you? And I've asked those questions, and people will say, if you look at it, the sporting achievements, you've got your Leicesters, you've got your Nottingham Forest, you can see the intake of that. You've got the Velodrome in Derby, you've got, Loughborough University, sport, big thing. Pharmaceuticals, big thing, huge thing, actually, especially in Nottingham and further afield. You've got your transport links, you've got, the movement with fusion and things like that. But there is so much that needs to be done in the East Midlands. Where do you today, looking at the East Midlands from your perspective, think the gaps are?
I think the East Midlands, first of all, is the thing that binds you and I together.
Yeah, it does.
It's obviously our first conversation was about it and where we could go with it. And I think you've got to, as an East Midlander, you've got to look at our neighbour in the West Midlands, what Andy Street achieved in the years that he was mayor of the West Midlands. And it was phenomenal. You know, he turned around the West Midlands. And for a long, long time, the East Midlands has not had that ability. You know, I'm very reluctant to call it, and you'll laugh here, about the combined authority, because it's not a combined authority, because you don't have Leicester and Leicestershire.
Absolutely.
So, but, you know, there is now an East Midlands combined authority. But has it realised its potential yet? Absolutely not. I mean, I do know who the mayor is now, but only because I met her on a couch like this on TV. Other than that, I had to do research on her to find out who she was. We've not seen that office so far deliver anything for the East Midlands potential. Where can we go from here? What can we do to make the East Midlands equal, if not better than, the West Midlands?
And that's a great question, because for me, there is so much talent in the East Midlands, and we've touched on some of the, you know, the areas I mentioned: pharmaceuticals, transport, you know, all that to go with it. There's plenty of sound bites coming from the combined authority. Yeah, and a lot of announcements.
D2N2. Let's just call it D2N2.
Okay, fine, yeah. But a lot of announcements, yeah. But when you get to the grassroots of what's actually going on, and I'll talk about quickly, like Nottingham City, yeah. And I see the homelessness in Nottingham City. I see the issues with young people falling into knife crime because of that lack of purpose and hope. But then I'm going to go to the other side of it. I see projects like Emmanuel House, who are helping the homeless, ex-veterans. There's a huge percentage of ex-veterans who are homeless in Nottingham. And then I see the work that people like Marcel Spaz and Switch Up are doing with young people on knife crime, and trying to take them down a path to get them into apprentices and get them into a different direction. And then you see the work that's being done by, or projects by the university that link into community. You've then got groups that really do harness that talent, young people at colleges. And I think where the issue is for me is it's not linked up. Mm-hmm. It's not. So I'll give you an example, and this is something I'm really have a beef around, right? So do you remember the old work experience we did as when we were kids?
YTS.
YTS.
Proud YTS at £28.50 a week.
I think mine was 27, but anyway, a quid less. But if you remember when you wanted to first go and do that work experience, and the world is different, right? I get that. But I see young people today not briefed on how to apply for work experience. Mm-hmm. That beats me up. I can't get it. Why are they not prepared? And why is there not a conduit that actually lines up all the industries, every single industry, and the schools are linked to those industries, so the whole platform is made easier? So they haven't got to approach a business like mine or yours or anybody else's. There's something in place to help them on that pathway. And that pathway then leads to vocational. Vocational leads to jobs, yeah? And let's focus our energies on that. Mm-hmm. Let's focus our energies on helping veterans who, when they leave the armed forces, and you know better than anybody else the process of it, it's a harsh process.
Absolutely.
And I've done a lot of work with Chilwell Barracks and around the country, and I'm working on a project now. And we're not looking after our own. Mm-hmm. And that beats me up, right? But there's more elements to the homelessness, and you can link some of it because the question. And I don't want to get into immigration tonight because we're going to do an episode on immigration itself, and hopefully get the right person on the couch when we talk about immigration. But you got to question the services that we can't offer because we're not in control of some of the things around the borders, etc. Anyway, move on. But then you come back to that bit, what does the East Midlands represent today compared to what it used to represent? So, a big piece of work going on, fusion energy, but that's not today.
Yep.
That's the future.
I think you've just stumbled on something there. We've talked about two different groups predominantly, being the ex-military and the youth. Now, obviously, I've got first-hand experience. I'm ex-military myself. I left 20 odd years ago now. And I joined as a schoolboy, and you are incredibly well looked after in the military. You know, your council tax is taken out of your wages. Your rent, your food is even taken out of the military when your wages before when you get married. Obviously, that changes slightly, but when you're living in quarters, so you can't really get in any trouble financially at all. You are really, really well looked after. And then the day that you leave, that safety net goes. And this is why we find so many people that are ex-military homeless or committing suicide or just generally having a bad time as well, because they not only lose that safety net, they lose their peer group. In the military, it's really weird. You can hate the person you work with, but you know they've got your back.
Yeah.
They would take a bullet for you no matter what. And I've always said that. You know, the peer group you have in the military is second to none. I can go years without speaking to some of my friends that I serve with, and then I bump into them in a reunion or a bar or something like that, and it's literally like it's the next day. It's that sort of mindset. And to take that away from people, it's crushing. It really is. I was very fortunate. I could have gone one way or another, but I've made my own little military within my business, and I've grown my own army as such. And that's sort of been my passion going forward. And that's now lent it the way my business works. It's all about youth. And that's, again, something that you and I have got a lot in common with, is that we want to give youth opportunity. And to me, again, everything boils back to 1997. Mr. Blair, I refuse to call him sir, Mr. Blair decided that everybody must go to university. And for the last 30 years, we've got a whole generation now that thinks that is the norm. It's not. There are so many kids like you and I that were never going to excel in university. I was good with my hands. I was an engineer. You know, I've been very fortunate. I've had a fantastic career as an engineer. And then obviously I set my own business up, nothing to do with engineering. But it gave me the tools. The Royal Air Force gave me the tools. It gave me the skills, gave me the qualifications, and it gave me the confidence to go into business. And now I know that you're working on something that will give young people the skills, the confidence to go into business and to be valuable contributors to businesses. Can you tell me a little bit more about your foundation?
Right. First of all, whenever I say I've got an idea, right, there's this thing people run, yeah? But the idea for me is about bringing it into fruition. It's a project I've been working on for many years in different ways. And it is driven from that memory of me as a 14-year-old, yeah? And that's the why behind it. This has been my home for 24 years. I have worked with different groups, like I mentioned, whether it's groups with young people who have been affected with gang culture, or I work with different groups with homelessness, etc. Anyway, but I've also seen the issues where young people want to go to college, say, for instance, but there's an issue of transport, buses, lack of free buses or whatever. They want to go to opportunities, jobs. So again, transport issues. And it's just, for me, the dots are not connected. And I have looked at this, and I'm again through the work I've done with business, etc., and I've been fortunate. And I want to bring all those dots together, all those businesses, all those people, all those individuals who've done the hard 9 yards, and together what we do is we create a program that actually brings the hearts and the minds of the East Midlands together to not only help future generations, future workforce, but even the workforce of today, and even those who aren't quite ready to hang their boots up, but want a different opportunity to do something for society today. And it's not the big society, etc. It's about how do we build back the East Midlands to that formidable place, not just sound bites. So the foundation for me, it's the East Midlands Enterprise Foundation, which it's in its infancy. and I'm not going to sit here today and say, we've done this, we've done that, and whatever. I tell you what I have done is a load of bloody research, yeah. And and I've gone to organisations all over the country, and I've done a lot of work. Jobs Foundation, doing some great work around the country, and I've looked at research, and I've talked to young groups of people, and different Nottinghamshire College and all different colleges, etc. And I employ young people who are apprentices as well, and I talk to people, but I talk to their parents as well, and I talk to their grandparents. And what I want to this whole thing is about a framework that creates purpose and hope for the East Midlands, and it's about harnessing that talent. It's about the opportunities, finding the opportunities, but linking them up. It's about the purpose of those opportunities and what doors they can open. And the last bit, which of course is E, right? And it isn't just one E, yeah. It's about the 3 E's: engage, educate, and encourage. And there's a framework, there's a great piece of work that's going on. There's great minds and hearts involved with this project, and it's growing. And for me, the foundation is about bringing people together and making a difference and helping the life and oxygen of our region be a better place. And that's business, that's education, you name it, every kind of conduit you can think of. And I'm bloody minded enough to, do it and want to do it. And it comes back to Mother Jones: work, learn, and earn. So anyway, I'm going to come off my soapbox now. Yeah,
no, you deservedly be on it.
But it's something I'm very passionate about, and I've been influenced by great people, especially in the East Midlands. And it's those people, and I've named a couple of them tonight, that it's the very reason that this foundation for me, it'll be successful because of those people, not because of me. So, yeah, anyway, so yes, everything East Midlands. I think we're coming to the end.
I think we are.
I think we've exhausted.
It's about that 11:30 at night look. And
No.
The wife's going, will he get lost now?
Yeah,
I want to go sleep.
So let's wrap this up. First podcast. We kind of were making notes earlier on going, what's this going to look like and whatever. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about Labour, reform, people, the region. I think we have really exhausted, but this is only one episode.
Absolutely.
So, do you fancy doing another one?
Well, we've bought all the gear now, and obviously you bought your new deck chair suit. So
different shirt next time. We
could swap.
Mine won't fit you. Bless you. Look, we're going to carry on this podcast and expand it and expand it with the people around the UK, but also everything East Midlands, because that's what we're really passionate about as well. And so we are going to get some cracking conversators on the couch and in the room, and we're going to do it from different venues as well.
We are, yeah. What have we got coming up in 2 weeks?
Oh, conference!
Yeah, don't forget conference. I'm dead excited.
Are we going to do this at conference?
I think we should.
You reckon?
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find a corner somewhere.
Yeah. And, do you reckon we can get a few big names onto it and talk to them about some of the subjects?
I think between us, within our diaries, we've got a lot of the big hit players at the Conservative conference in our address book. So,
and let's get some of the activists, and let's get some of the people who make it happen, the volunteers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's series 1. We still haven't got a name for it. We'll think something up, but for now, from Smithy.
And from Jonesy.
That's it.
Thanks very much.